All right, everybody, welcome to the channel. I'm Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon and The Blackest Heart, both published by Simon & Schuster Saga Press. I apologize. I'm going to be standing really close to the camera for this video. I made a mistake and wrote all of my notes really tiny. Sometimes I don't do notes, sometimes I do notes. But usually when I do notes, I write them in big magic markers so I can stand back from the camera and read them. I wrote these in ballpoint pen, so anyway. What are we doing today? We're reviewing 2001 A Space Odyssey by Arthur C. Clarke. We always talk about the covers first, because I love cover illustration and graphic design. What can we say about this one? It is what it is. It's a big science fiction book with a flashy red cover. That's about what we got. Can't complain about it. It was written in 1968. Believe it or not, there's a foreword. There's about a 10-page foreword in this where Arthur C. Clarke talks about the writing of this book. And I didn't realize this book was actually written in conjunction with Stanley Kubrick as kind of a screenplay and template for the movie of the same name. So this wasn't a book first that became a movie. This was actually a book written as a companion piece to the movie. So it kind of follows the movie plot point by plot point, really. That's something that I did not realize. One of the things about it is written in 1968. It's about the year 2001, Space Odyssey 2001. So it's set in 2001. So there's like a 33-year gap, from 68 to 2001. So it's kind of interesting to see what people like Arthur C. Clarke in 1968, well, they started rewriting it in 1964, but what did those people back then think 2001 was going to be like? This is... The 60s was before Star Wars. They were writing this before Star Wars had ever come out, before any of the great, huge, big, bombastic space opera movies that we have now, like Guardians of the Galaxy, or even Interstellar, or anything like that has even come out. So they didn't have a lot to base much on. They hadn't even been to the moon yet. We hadn't even traveled to the moon yet when they started writing these books and getting this movie ready. So it's interesting to see sort of the way they formed this book and how they thought the year 2001 would go. And there's some pretty crazy predictions that were way off and some pretty crazy predictions that were spot on. And so we're going to get into those. The opening of the book is just like the opening of the movie. I remember when I first saw 2001 A Space Odyssey, it was probably in the early 1980s when I was a kid. And at that time, the only space movies we really had were Star Wars. So even the graphics that were in Space Odyssey 2001 were pretty dynamite at the time, pretty comparable to what Star Wars was like. But like I said, nowadays, we've got so much great CGI that it kind of renders the things that Kubrick did in 2001 A Space Odyssey, the movie, a little bit bland. It's still awe-inspiring in their own way, but just we've come a long way in our movie-making technology. Gosh, I really hate doing this video so damn close to the camera. Let me see if I can back up and still do it. The opening theme is, the dun, 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 with the apes and the monolith. 40 pages in, from page 1 to 40, we get the apes and the monolith. So we're following around right here. And then we jump to part 2 with Dr. Floyd. And then we start to get some predictions of what 2001 might actually be like. They predict that there's going to be 6 billion people on the planet in 2001. That was about right. But they thought it would be a catastrophe. They thought everybody would be starving to death. And that the world would be on the brink of, destruction because of 6 billion people. Well, as we found out, the world can handle 6 billion people. Probably, what are we at to now? 10 billion or something in 2021? So, prediction that was a little bit off there. Another prediction that they had was that there would be a virus. Well, this came out. They predicted the virus in 2001. The virus actually didn't show up till 2020, but they claim that it's a moon-based virus started by an Asian country which shall not be named, because Lord knows we don't want my video to be demonetized or just kicked off of YouTube entirely, like my review of The Stand when I mentioned a virus that should not be named. I can't, so Arthur C. Clarke and Staniel and Kubrick, they say there's going to be a virus, and it's probably going to be the dastardly deed of a certain Asian country that shall not be named. But they name it in the book, of course, because back then, Hey, it is what it is. They predicted that one spot on, only about 20 years too early. Anyway, what happens is they've got flights. One of the things they predicted is there's going to be regular airline flights to the moon. Or not to the moon, but to the space station. And Dr. Floyd goes on one of these flights, and the stewardess, that's what they call them in the book, airline flights complete with stewardesses / flight attendants, to the space station, and then from the space station they go to the moon. And, those great scenes in the movie where the space station is spinning and the spacecraft is docking at the bay and the sunlight is streaming over the space station. My gosh, back in the day, back when this movie was made, such great graphics, so dynamic, and the music and everything that went with those scenes. And believe it or not, if you read this book, those scenes are written in this book exactly like they're filmed, with the sun breaking over the space station and the light gleaming off of its surfaces. It's just beautifully written, and quite awe-inspiring. I was really starting to dig this book for just the big, grand science fiction themes that it has. Much like over here on my shelf, I'm looking at my Arthur C. Clarke shelf, and I got Rendezvous with Rama, which is one of my favorite books of all time. This I have never read before until today, and I just think it compares with Rendezvous with Rama in its awe-inspiring, hard science fiction, just wonderment. One of the themes of this book, the big theme of this book, with the monoliths that are in the Stone Age monoliths that the apes see at the beginning of the movie and at the beginning of the book, and then the monolith that's found on the moon is, one of the themes is that's running through this is why have we not seen alien species? Why has there been no first contact with Earth? Because in 2001 we've started to colonize the planets. Arthur C. Clarke and Kubrick, they thought that we would be off to Jupiter and Saturn and stuff by 2001. And they were like, why has there been no alien species that's contacted us? So then these monoliths are kind of like a clue that maybe the alien species did contact us, but it was millions of years ago when the Earth was still in its Stone Age and we were still apes, and they left these monoliths. And now they're trying to figure out what these monoliths are. Were they just road map markers for the aliens? Were they tombs? Is it a tomb? Is it some sort of a religious symbol? A shrine of some kind? There's a lot of stuff like that. And, of course, then we get those great scenes with the computer HAL, that the movie makes so famous and the book spends a lot of time on. Just a great book. And I gotta say, the fact that this guy, Clarke, was born in 1917 and he lived till 2008. So he was born in 1917 and he wrote this in the 60s. So he was probably in his late 40s or early 50s when he wrote this. So he had not seen, this Arthur C. Clarke had not seen a lot of, he had seen technological advances, but nothing like what we've got now. And the fact that he wrote a book just as super dynamic and awe-inspiring as this is just plain fucking awesome. It's just awesome. And so, it was a quick read. It's not It's only about 250 pages, and the type is really good. I zoomed through this in a couple of hours, just delighted with every word. I thought it was great. I just thought it was great. A pleasant surprise. I went into it not knowing what to expect and was pleasantly surprised. I'm going to give this a 9 out of 10 just for my sheer, it was a surprise to me.